morning everyone. We're going to be doing a very different type of project from anything we've done before. We're going to be doing Gyotaku, which is the Japanese printing of fish. So you can see here I've got a fresh fish. Okay, so you're going to need for this obviously a fresh fish or something that's got a tactile surface. If you're handling fish, you do need to make sure that you've cleaned it beforehand. Be really careful, this one is quite sharp and I cut my finger, so do be careful, take precautions. So it's just been cleaned up. I am going to just take off the excess water. Okay. Now with the Japanese, when they were originally doing this technique, they would use live fish because their fish were prized and seen as sacred. I just see some marks on there. And they didn't have digital cameras back then. They would take the fish that they caught and then they would do these little, well, sometimes actually big prints of fish. So you know the old story of, you know, the one that got away. This way they could prove exactly the size of the fish that they had caught. So they'd put their fish out on their table and normally they would pin it a bit in place so it weren't jumping around. Then they'd use a kind of edible ink. Now we're going 21st century. I've got some black oil paint and I'm putting my black oil paint out onto a palette. Okay, I've got a sponge and I've got my piece of paper. So this is just standard photocopying paper that I'm going to use to print on top of. I've got a stiff brush and I'm going to pick up some oil paint on my stiff brush and then I'm going to paint my fish. If you go online, you'll find that other people are doing this. It's becoming increasingly popular these days, and what they're doing is they're painting in different colours. So you can do it in other colours. This is quite traditional, the old black. If you're choosing a fish and you're down the fishmongers for precisely this reason, do try and go for a fish that has got quite a strong texture to it. You'll find that certain species have got very fine scales and they don't show up so well when printing. Also, you may want to consider the surface that you're putting your fish on. You can see here I've got a piece of plastic down because I really don't want everything stinking of fish after I've done this. I'm going to take my time, and we all know that oil paint is great for staying wet for long periods of time, so you don't have to rush if you're using oil paint for this technique. Just try and get all in those scales. You might find that you need to take a sponge and smooth it out across the fish, because with some of the paint brushes they can be a little bit stiff and difficult to get the ink to be nice and smooth on the surface of the fish. Okay, once you've got that on, then you take your piece of paper, apply it to the top of the fish, and you very carefully work it down. Now again, they would have used rice paper as the traditional form, but because I wanted to make this easily accessible for everyone, I'm just using photocopier paper. You won't get as good a print, but it should give you something. I did try and track down some rice paper and I found it incredibly hard. You have to order it off the internet. No one seems to stock it these days. Once you've done that, you peel off your paper and you've got your fish print. Okay, now everyone have a go at that at home.